Welcome everyone. I'm really excited for today's conversation. I'm delighted to have with us Deanne Arthur of Cage & Miles LLP. Deanne, you graduated from Howard University School of Law and began your legal career in San Diego, as well as criminal defense attorney, handling many domestic violence restraining orders, and then pivoted to family law, founding your own practice in 2016 before joining Cage & Miles in 2024 to focus exclusively on family law.
Welcome to join us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, Deanne, you had quite a journey from criminal defense into family law, and then starting with your own firm, and then into a bigger firm like Cage & Miles. What was the moment when you realized that, first of all, family law practice was your true focus, and how did that transition shape the way you work today?
So when I did criminal defense, I started getting a lot into domestic violence cases, and then that would have it would tippy toe into restraining orders. And so the attorney that I worked for at the time said, I don't really do restraining orders, but you can do some. And I really liked it. As I got into it, I realized I was better suited for more of affairs of the heart rather than some of the more black and white issues with criminal defense. And criminal defense just had a lot more on the line that I preferred to be comfortable with. People always say, how could you do family law rather than criminal defense? There's so many emotions in family law. I was like, there's emotions in criminal defense too. It's just most of the time they don't go to jail in family law. So as I started doing restraining orders,
That's a little bit better.
Yeah, I started doing restraining orders. I started liking it more and more. My boss said, yes, you can take on more, but he said, I don't really want to do, because then some of the restraining orders had custody components, and I liked it. And he said, I support you, but he said, but I don't know enough about it. I can't bail you out, as you learn. And so he was great because he said, but I'll support you if you want to do this going forward. So I got some mentors in the family law community, and I started doing more and more, and then I loved it. And then I opened up a practice right down the hall from him, and he was a great support. And then, as you know, with family law, it's a lot of word of mouth. And so I would get referrals through him and through other people, and just, snoozing and being in the family law community. And then it just spiraled from there, and it kept going, and it became the passion that I love to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. We actually interviewed a prosecutor a while back, and then, that's sort of a little bit, like you said, about there are a lot of things you really, first of all, the matters are really sometimes heartbreaking, and, somebody's going to jail or not, for how long, it's in your hands. So it is really heavy. But like you mentioned, family law could be heavy as well sometimes. So how do you navigate those? It's a little bit better compared, like you mentioned, compared to criminal defense, but there could be still heavy matters. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's heavy matters because people are dealing with the biggest things in their life. Most of the time, the most important thing in their life is their children, right? And for other people, it's their assets. Sometimes it's both. So I think because I had a passion for it more, it was a lot easier. But I think that the thing that has really worked for me in that scenario is being relatable, letting people know that they don't have to be embarrassed, that this happens to a lot of people, and that we're here to help. And so sometimes it's just about letting people talk, and letting them talk. As the lawyer, I have to pick out what's going to be relevant and useful in court, but I have to let them vent in the process. I think the biggest mistake sometimes family lawyers can make is just be like, okay, enough, let me just tell you what we can do next. Sometimes it's let them vent, let them get those feelings out. And while they're doing that, I'm plucking out the facts that I need for their case.
Yeah, we talked with an immigration attorney yesterday. It's very similar. A lot of people, it's a long story. There are facts that you need to tease out for the case, but at the same time, you got to play therapist sometimes to just let them vent and tell the story.
Yeah. You say like we're lawyers and counselors, right? Counselors at law. And so sometimes we have to put on that counselor hat, just to listen. And sometimes we have to advise people on the best way to handle their family situation, because what will that look like in court? I tell clients sometimes, don't send a text or send an email that you wouldn't be embarrassed me reading or the court reading. And so sometimes you have to advise people on how to co-parent, sometimes even how to deal with kids, right? Because you have kids that are trying to be parent pleasers, and I don't want a parent that's just, handling their frustration with going on in their lives, then now I have to deal with that in court. And then, the kid might say something that happened in court, or somebody's reading text messages. 2025, everybody does everything by text, email, and people forget. They feel like, they say all these terrible things that I want to say, and then you're sitting there like, oh my goodness, and you're like, oh, how long is this text message going to go on?
We gotta be careful now.
Oh, please.
Just
I
teasing.
can tell you're taking notes over there.
That might be why we're doing this podcast.
No, come on.
Just teasing. Free consultation. I know the hourly billable hour could be high, so we might as well just doing a podcast format.
Okay.
Okay, so
It takes a lot of heart to do what you do, and a lot of passion too, and care for the people involved. But from a firm's operations perspective, how do you see the intake of these clients, assignment and then resolution workflow? Where are the most friction points that you observe?
So I think I did have a little apprehension about going to big law when I was in private practice, because I felt like it's such affairs of the heart. Everything's particular to my conversations. And so I was hesitant at first, and now I feel like it was the best thing that I ever could have done. And the reason that I think it's the best thing that I ever could have done is because the firm that I went to is two attorneys, Shannon Miles and Jamie Cage, that came from big law. And they have made it their mission to say, we took the things from big law that we didn't like, and we essentially tried to allow you guys to be in bubbles of, small law, basically, but having more resources. So I get the advantage working there of being able to still run my cases of how I need to and how I want to, but then I get all of these resources. Because the problem that I was running into running my own, I love the flexibility and I love the freedom that I still have now, but I wanted to help everybody. That means I don't say no, right? I don't say no to the clients walking in, and then I didn't want to do them a disservice if there's only one of them, and I didn't want to stretch myself too thin. So then coming to Cage and Miles, I realized it's okay to delegate, and it's okay because I'm delegating to other attorneys that I trust, because at Cage and Miles has hired so well. And that doesn't happen overnight. I had to learn to do that. And now doing it, my clients get such an advantage by going to your question. How it works is we have this intake team that initially talks to a client, finds out their needs, because in family law, there's so many different types of issues and pockets that they could be in. So intake talks to them knowing all of the attorneys in the firm, they'll say, you know what, this is, a custody case with domestic violence, or this is a custody case with support. Deanne might be good for this. So let's have you talk to Deanne Arthur, and then I do the consultation, we talk more, and I find out how big or small the case is. Bigger case, and I'll say, okay, let me have, Jeff and Baha come in and be able to support. And then I'll have Lindsay doing some of maybe the smallest status conferences. And then we're going to trial. I am all in. I have all the time to do it because I have Jeff and I have Baha and I have Lindsay being able to write your pleadings and do all that, so that you come in to court, you meaning the client, and you have a well-oiled machine coming in to represent you. And so I say all that to say that has what's worked for me, coming from small practice to big law.
yeah, that was amazing. Well, I mean, this sounds like this is not really big law, because you create, it's basically a collection of small laws, like you mentioned. What would you say to be the pros and cons from your perspective, specifically operation-wise, human touch-wise, efficiency-wise, all that, from a small law, one lawyer, two lawyers, to a bubble model like Cage and Miles, to just big law firms? What would you say for each of them?
So that's a good question, because you're right. There are different ways of doing it. So obviously, small practice, it's good, but you have to be very careful about not taking on too many cases so that you don't have one client that's suffering or falling through the cracks, right? And so the problem that I had when I was solo practitioner is I had cases that deserved to go to trial. They deserved to have their day in court. And then I'm like, well, if I'm going to a 1 week trial, my office shuts down for one. And what about my other clients, you
Yeah.
know? Or, I mean, and to be truthful, what about my child that now I'm having to work? My day is starting after I get out of trial, and then I still have to pick up my son and do other things. So I was burning myself down, basically trying to do that. And then for me, I never imagined going to Big Law because I didn't want the type of clientele that didn't have direct access to me, or that you just get these clients that you didn't really know that well or handed off to you by other people, and you didn't get to have that touchy-feely relationship. That's the way cases work for me. I have more of a touchy-feely relationship. So the only way I considered it was, and the thing that was funny is I didn't wake up one morning and say, I want to change, I want to go to a big law firm. It was
Yeah.
me just seeing other lawyers from Cajun Miles, particularly one of the partners where I would even watch her cases. Her name is Jillian Duggan Hurd. And if I was in court, I would stop to watch her because she was that good. And I went to lunch with her one day and I was just talking about options. And as she was talking about the bubble experience, I was like, I want to do that. That's how I want to do it. But then you always tell yourself, oh, I don't know. You know, you say that as it too good to be true. But as I've gotten working and starting to do that, because I'm still able to be myself, I'm still able to run my practice how I want to. It's worked for me, and I think it's worked for my clients because I've only been more productive since I stopped law office of Deanne Arthur and become to Cajun Miles. But I think that my clients have really gotten an advantage, and because all of my clients obviously came with me, and I can even see the difference
Yeah.
in their case, you know, because I feel more confident. Because every single day I'll say, okay, we can go to trial then. Whereas before it was like, see if we can settle because I may not have time to go to trial for a week. And now I feel good about saying that.
Yeah. So Cajun Miles really found you and better your life and your client's life.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it almost sounds like it's a
That's amazing.
commercial, but these questions follow with how things have progressed, you know?
Yeah. And it sounds like it provides you with the mentorship, the resource, and also the reach to a larger clientele, both the resource side and also the clientele side. So now, when you think of um, helping more people, taking on more cases with the resource distribution and scaling, both from, what would you say an efficient pipeline would be? I mean, we talk about from intake to assignment to resolution, but what would be an efficient pipeline look like specifically for a bubble model?
So the thing about a bubble model that is great is that there's not a specific pipeline and we have the flexibility to change. So it just depends on every type of
Okay.
client. You might have a client that comes in that's so contentious. These parties are so contentious. You feel like, how did you ever procreate any human being at any point? Um, and so you know that off top, it's okay, they're not going to agree on the color of the sky. So this might be an all hands on deck, all team getting together because we might have ex partes coming in, requests for orders coming in before we even get to trial. This may just be litigious, litigious, litigious. So in that scenario, the pipeline would be intake, hire, hit the ground running, court dates. We have a team doing pleadings. We have somebody else doing status conferences, me doing the big hearings. So that's the pipeline for that kind of case. Another client that comes in and says, hey, you know what? We were married, X amount of years. It just didn't work out. We still like each other, still good people. We're already coming up with our own agreements. How can we help? Kind of thing. That's a scenario where I assess to say, because I never want to put people in the worst position. I don't want to come in and where they're just penniless when they're done. If they have kids and
Mhm.
all of that, I don't want a situation where we're spending the children's college fund on unnecessary litigation. So I look at that case and say, you know what? This might be a case that we might be able to sit down amongst lawyers and get something resolved for you, no litigation required. Or if we need a
Mhm.
neutral third party to kind of come in and give their perspective, then we have what we call a five-way sit down where we go to mediation. We have a retired judge or experienced family law attorney help us mediate and come to agreements. Sometimes we even have a situation where it's just letters back and forth with the attorneys and then it gets resolved. And so in that kind of situation, it may just be me, assistants, paralegals dealing with it, keeps costs down, and can get resolved fairly quickly. So it's either the type of case where scorched earth or let's friendly do this, get this done. And so I think that the pipeline is different based on that type of scenario.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really, it sounds like it really, by different, by customizing based on the client, it is really increasing their quality, and it sounds like it makes the right time, the right resource used at the right point. You save their budget as well, but at the same time giving them a better quality and resolution as well.
Yeah, I always tell clients, I say, this is your life. And so if we can resolve it where we can, where we don't have a stranger, meaning the judge, deciding your life, we would like to do that. But at the end of the day, I am fighting for you. But when this is all resolved, I walk away. And I don't want to leave you with a fire and a mess just to raise fees or do whatever. I want to put you in the best position possible going forward, because this is also the type of business where I don't want my client walking away and saying, yeah, she took me to trial and, that was it. I didn't really get the things I wanted. This is about creating a situation where we walk them through the hardest type of their life, which is life changing. It's ending a relationship. It's changing the nature of children. So I want to do it in a way where they can live with what occurred after. And I have clients also that say, when it's resolved also in a good way, they say, this is great, you were wonderful, I hope I never see you again. I'm like, great, that's wonderful. I take that as a compliment. If you have to keep coming back in and coming back to me, yes, it's probably a litigious case, but we want to come up with a scenario where it's something that holds and can stick for a period of time that can help. Obviously, there's going to be things out of control. We can't control how litigious the other side's going to be, but that's usually the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that we've been hearing, talking with other lawyers as well, especially right now, is legal technology. Of course, we can't get away from that. Everybody's talking about it. Now, we've been hearing both certain practice areas or certain ways of doing things that are perfect fit for those, and then others that are highly customized. Every client is very different, their stories. It might be not as straightforward, and sometimes it might in some niche creating efficiency, but it definitely would not be a cookie cutter, a big commercialized pipeline to solve that problem. What are you looking forward? Where would technology play into your specific niche, and which part will be most efficient, and which part will definitely not be done besides your human touch?
Yes, exactly.
So technology, obviously, is taking over. Courts are becoming more technologically savvy. So we are able to do things more. We're starting to do trials by iPad, meaning not everything is, can you read this paper? All this. Now it's, look at this iPad, can you swipe? But specifically, the things that have made things a little bit harder and a little bit easier, ChatGPT. So ChatGPT has been helpful in the sense that sometimes clients don't always just know how to communicate with other sides. Sometimes I'll say, you know what, throw that in ChatGPT before you send it to the other party. Before you want to say like, I hate you and you're the worst and please, get out of my life. Put it into ChatGPT, see how that comes back to you, and see how that helps. So it helps in that way. Sometimes it can be difficult because, as you said, it can be a niche situation. So when a client sends me a novel of an email that came from ChatGPT about things that they may think is applicable to their case, it's tough because I have to pull out what's applicable and what's not. And sometimes I have to tell clients, I'm like, we have to be careful about your billing, because I am now explaining a ChatGPT explanation that 75% of it doesn't actually apply to your facts, because it's very different. So I don't want clients to think that, oh, it'll help my billing if I can help my attorney with all the legal things that ChatGPT told me, and I'm unwinding that, which is double billing at that point, and I don't like that. But it can be helpful in that way. But technology has also helped because ever since COVID, we started to be able to make online appearances. So clients don't always have to pay for travel or wait time in court. But something as small as a status conference where we're just setting new dates, that's great for an online appearance, and that is helpful for clients. I don't typically do online for trial and for highly contested. So I want, a lot of times you have to assess credibility, especially in restraining order. I want that judge to see my client and be able to look at my client and say, that could have never happened the way they're saying it, or that exactly happened the way the client is saying it. But overall, technology has been great. There's just small parts of it that hinder us a little bit. But I think that it's moving in a good direction. And that's another thing with being with a firm, we have more access to the technology as it's moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. In your firm, though, have you had any innovation? Are you guys using AI or any specific software right now that is helping with driving you into the future?
Yes, actually, the judges and we have continuing education classes, and they have actually, it's now coming out as a rule that we need to start using AI, because also that benefits clients, because we don't want to charge them for 2 hours when AI can actually help and reduce all of their billing. So it's now becoming part of our rules of professional conduct to have to be knowledgeable on it and to have to be able to learn it to help clients and to be able to help reduce the work that would essentially not be necessary based on what AI can do. But the flip side of that coin is we're also tasked with the responsibility of using it wisely. Judges do not want situations where we're bringing in briefs and points and authorities that came strictly from AI that we haven't done our due diligence on. There was a seminar that they talked to us about where pretty experienced attorneys, they got kind of down to crunch time and they submitted these documents with cases that AI had given. And as you know, AI wants to please the person asking it questions. And AI came
Hallucination.
up with, AI came up with cases that didn't exist. And so they presented those cases to the court, and it went further and further along until finally a judge was like, wait a minute, these cases don't exist. And so it can't just be like a oopsies. The attorney is tasked with the responsibility and the consequences to not present information that's false, because we're dealing with people's lives. You're asking the court to make rulings against another person on cases that don't exist. So they want us to be able to use it, and they've tasked us with the responsibility of how to appropriately use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is basically the definition of human in the loop.
Human in the loop, yeah.
Which is a term that we often use when discussing AI and different AI products, is you don't want it to just send out and you have to be the one to
You're
check.
the commander.
Yes, exactly. You explain it better.
Yeah, no, we talk with the IP attorney who, it's interesting because he both implements AI in his own law firm. He also does patent work for different AI softwares. So what he was talking about,
Yes.
well, he knows it. He doesn't build too much himself, but he knows all the details, all the secrets of different because from IP perspective. What he was talking about on our podcast as well is the pie. It really is not. There are two, like what we're talking about. There are like two different ways. One way is that people start to say, "Oh, billable hour is dead," and we're taking out so many cases and we crunch it out, automating. The problem with that is the quality really reduces. The other way is that using the same hours from the experts, the attorneys, the pie has shifted. The brain, the really, really talented and experienced brain now is used for the really high value stuff, and letting all those tasks that don't need that talented brain to be outsourced. Maybe used to be legal assistant, but now with a gated tool, and that really changed the pie and actually increased the quality instead of decreasing the quality.
Well, also, they would become more of editors, less, actually writing all the different things out. They would be more, they would spend more time editing and
gatekeeping,
observing and, fixing things that maybe might be wrong. But yeah, that was one of the discussions we had previously.
Yeah. No, I like that you're able to edit more than just reinventing the wheel and, starting from scratch, which is beneficial to the clients.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it sounds like from what you were saying is that there really needs to be a gatekeeper. It really is going to be like you said, you can direct your client to use ChatGPT to bounce off their messages, stuff like that. But you really want to gatekeep that chat. You don't want that chat to be just saying anything. You really
Yeah.
want your sort of with the expertise to gatekeep that, but also at the same time for that to be associated with you, so they're not saying, also, why do we need a lawyer anymore?
Right, right. So that's the thing. I don't feel any fear that we will become obsolete because AI can only do so much, right? And then you need
Yeah.
that editing, you need that gatekeeper. And at the end of the day, AI can give you the prettiest pleadings, but who's going to argue that for you in court? Who's going to present that to the judge, right? And sometimes it's about presentation, you know. Most lawyers, good lawyers, don't just sit up there and say, and then according to people the whatever, whatever. You have to put a spin on it, right? You have to make that judge feel like they know these people. And you do that with an inflection in your voice and the way you present the case and the feeling that you give for the client next to you that AI will never be able to do. So I feel like AI is great. Do I have any fear that I will become obsolete? Maybe I think too highly of myself, but no.
No, and
Based on what you were saying, I've often heard, lawyers are the best storytellers. Is
Mhm.
that they have to be very good at telling the story so that everybody, including if there's a jury, that even mundane people can understand all the legal jargon that there
Mhm.
is. And
Mhm.
honestly, I think that is a very specialized talent that many lawyers, and it sounds like you have that talent too.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, you're an extension of your client. So lawyers do their clients a disservice by coming off almost too abrasive and unlikable because you have a client that may not have ever opened their mouth, and you find yourself thinking, man, I really hate that guy. And you're like, oh wait, I've never even talked to him. I just hate his lawyer so much.
that's crazy. Yeah. And the other thing about, I agree that you won't be obsolete because you are very experienced and you are a pre-AI era lawyer where you went to law school and practiced law long before AI. And you're
Mhm.
experienced, and you know what is garbage, what is spitting out to be garbage, and what is actually valuable. Now, two prospective lawyers who might be listening to this episode as well, to law school students or people who are thinking about the post AI era lawyers, what do they need to be cautious about?
You're talking about lawyers coming in with um, technology being so much at the forefront. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like maybe they leverage AI to write law school assignments or
Yeah.
the moot trials.
Or to
Um,
summarize.
yeah, because we've heard from before about the senior lawyers are saying experienced lawyers know what to gatekeep, but what they see is a lot of associate lawyers use AI, but they don't know what is garbage, what is real, actually valuable.
Yeah. I think the biggest mistake and the thing that they should be careful of is not using over depending on AI to take away from learning the law, right? It's easy to plug something in and then put it into a brief or put it into a letter without retaining that information and learning it because it's almost like the difference between law school and practice. Law school will teach you the laws. In studying for the bar and all of that will teach you the codes and the laws, but it's something different on how to practice it, how to use it, and how to have the human experience with your clients. So it would be a danger to get so involved with AI that AI is taking over for the work rather than it being an aid. So no, new attorneys need to make sure that they always keep in mind that AI is there to help you, not take over for you. Or else then it becomes where you are interchangeable, you don't put any heart and thought into it, and every situation is different. And a lot of times it's also about creativity. It's not just about finding a law and arguing it, it's about being creative. I mean, I'm sure you guys know lawyers can argue anything, and you can argue something that's wrong or right, but it's how you're able to do that rather than just spitting out information from AI.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I hope during counseling sessions with different couples, you don't teach them too many tactics on how to argue.
Healthily argue. Healthily communicate.
Yeah. You guys are getting a lot of inside tips from me right now.
right there. But so, like you said, the creativity part. It sounds like you're, the eight part instead of replacing part, the creativity part. Sounds like you're very, you're experienced and you know the creativity part. You're at a canvas. Now we go to a drawing board. If you're gonna have a magic wand and design a system for the next era, how would you design it based on your experience and your knowledge and that you've gone through the operations and the different cases as well?
If I could have a magic marker and make it where cases went through in the way that I wanted them to go through, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, like
I
where the creativity.
Yeah, I think it's hard because every situation is so different. So there isn't a way that I can say this would be my game plan for how the new way of divorcing should be or how the new way of parentage should be. But the thing that breaks my heart the most really is when kids are at the center. And so I think that courts aren't necessarily opposed to this, but it's just resources. But I think that anytime that there's a custody case, I think that the case should start off with essentially some type of counseling and therapy just how to deal with two parents communicating with these children. They try to do that down the road. They try to do it in a I always tell clients that courts are reactive, not proactive, right? Where now I would
Right.
like a situation, if there was the most resources, that we handle things in a proactive way. I would like to prevent before it starts. And I can understand why that can't be the case because the court can't act on basically make orders on what they think that would happen. But if I could have a magic wand, it would be to prevent these kids from going through the hardship and the heartache of parents that are so angry with each other that they will destroy a child because they think some of the worst type, they think that this child would be better off if they know how bad that parent is. I'm just telling them how bad they are, right? And they'll be better off for it. So if I could wave my magic wand, it would be that before they get into court, they have to sit down with a counselor of this is what you do and do not do when it comes to now divorcing with especially little kids so that we can avoid when we have minors counsel, therapy, all of these things, because if they do not understand that their pain shouldn't be their child's pain. And I know that seems as if like, oh, that seems like common sense. It is not.
You're right.
Yes, you're right. Now, I think that is amazing. If you had another magic wand, looking back to the law firm and the operations side of it, what if you had a magic wand to make something automated or something easier, like an aid for you, what would you make?
That's a good question because I'm the wrong person to ask as far as more automated when it comes to family law, right? Because
Yeah.
I think that everybody's situation has to deal with, I need somebody to know how I feel. I want you to represent my case
Mm-hmm.
because I need you to know the background. And you couldn't fully know what I want if you didn't know how I met my partner, what they were like when they were dating, what it was like during the marriage. So it would be hard to say, type in the history of your case, let me review it and have an automated system give me an assessment of it. To be honest, that'll make my job probably a little bit easier and that would be great. But I just don't think that there's a way to make things more automated in a way, in family law particularly, to make a client feel heard. I mean, there's so many times where I have to tell a client, I appreciate the history from 23 years ago, and I would love to listen to it, but I need to get a little bit more focused on let's just go to 2023 and then let's get to 2025. But it's hard. It's hard when I have to tippy toe around that, and I have to let them talk and say, okay, can we just skip a few beats and get a little further down the road?
Absolutely. Family law takes so much heart and patience and care. I think, you really, really care for your clients and your cases, especially the children. And like you were mentioning, the children just get torn up in between. And I like your idea previously about, the counseling before even going to, you know, the law office, or even going into anything. I think that would be great. And, I think it's common sense, but at the same time, sometimes it just isn't for some people,
Yeah. Sometimes it's shocking the messages that I read. I'm like, you really thought this was a good idea to send that way. You felt good about this text.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. I've seen so many.
Hopefully not from me.
No, none from you.
Yeah. So I've seen so many from
We
Dave.
don't
I
text.
mean,
We
so
actually
many.
talk face to face.
Yeah.
We just talk face to face. We don't text.
Yes. Oh, what a novel idea.
Yeah.
I
Well,
know.
to close up, final question for the arguing couples out there, or people who need a good family lawyer, or custody case, whatever. Why should they call you? And why should clients and even prospective lawyers to go with Cajun Miles?
Because I think that we are a different type of brand and practice in that, like I said, we have more resources, but we're able to give that client that hand to hand, touchy feely experience with way more resources than they would be afforded if they just went to a solo practitioner. We have such a developed way in the way that we are in the firm that we have the ability to tap on any type of resources. If I had a client that came in that had multiple issues and I'm comfortable with 90% of it, but there's a little 10% where I may not be as comfortable in business valuation or something like that, I can look over and ask another attorney in the firm. Or let's say things don't always go quite as I planned. We have one of the only family law appellate attorneys that work for the firm. He's right down the hall. I can ask him. And so clients get that benefit of having additional resources, but then being able to not have to go through a bunch of different chains if they need to talk to me directly. They still would have a direct line. They can still email me. And with, technology the way it is, we are on email all of the time, sometimes even in court waiting on cases. And so it allows things to fast track. But I think overall, being an attorney at Cajun Miles, it's able to give clients a more white glove experience. And I hate to say experience as if it's like this Disneyland experience, but when going through the hardest time of your life, you want to, as a client, feel like if I need to settle this case, she'll help me settle. If she wants to go to the mat and I need her to fight tooth and nail, she will do that. And I think that me as an attorney and the attorneys at our firm provide that for our clients, that we can go any direction and we will support our clients in the way that's in their best interest.
That is amazing.
Absolutely.
Who are people waiting for? Just call Cajun Miles and find Deanne.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. It was incredibly valuable. I really appreciate your time and openness.
Yes,
Thank you,
yes,
Deanne.
thank you. It was great questions. It was a great conversation.
Great.